Hello, good evening, everyone. How are you? And we're back again on our conversation on conscious bias. And I'm just going to assume that most of us, some of us, have watched our previous presentation on this topic. And I'm getting audience and followers and people are paying attention to this conversation we're having. But most importantly, we're becoming more aware, more accountability, and we're taking actions in our respectful places of work, religious gathering, in our homes, which is not excluded. But before I go ahead, I'd like to reintroduce myself again. I'm your host, Susuana Olatunji-Komolafe, and I hope you will come along with me to critically enjoy this conversation by engaging and contributing through your interaction on the platform, sending us questions. If you'd like to join when I'm having this conversation live, I can invite you in, you can join. And if you want to challenge the conversation, if you want to be part of this process of pioneering the idea, the ideology, and the concept around conscious bias. So if you're watching me on LinkedIn, try and follow, drop your comments, engage in a conversation. Let me know what you're thinking. If you're watching me on YouTube, drop your comments, subscribe to the YouTube channel Susanna on the Move. Engage with us, and we'll be delighted to engage a reciprocal back to you. And before I continue our conversation today, I'm going to go back and just re-emphasize, reintroduce the ideology and the concept which I'm pioneering, which is what is conscious bias. So, as defined by myself, conscious bias as the intentional recognition and shaping of our biases rather than denying or ignoring them. Unlike unconscious bias, which operates automatically, conscious bias is about choosing to be aware, choosing to be aware of our attitude and deliberately directing them towards inclusivity and justice. So the whole idea and the whole concept in which I'm trying to bring our attention to is becoming aware, becoming accountability, becoming accounter, giving accountability and taking an actionable action towards our biases and prejudice. Owning up to it, it's important that we own up to it because their presence, they are there. We all have it. It's going back to what we discussed last time. is the background of everything we're talking about, and it lays the foundation true because it comes from our culture. Most of these prejudices and biases are part of the things that our culture, we've experienced, and we're experiencing, and we're living, is a cultural foundation in which we've laid our thoughts, our attitude, our biases, and prejudice on. So it is important that we acknowledge it and that we started directing how we allow it to function within our society in a productive manner. And that is basically the key thing we will love every one of us to take away from this conversation. And as we grow our audience and as we become globally conscious of our conscious bias, as the consciousness grow of this ideology of conscious bias, taking this accountability, the world is shifting. We can't continue being unconsciously biased. We have to move beyond that. We have to be consciously biased, own our consciousness, own because we're becoming more conscious of our environment, of our faith, of our religion, of everything we're doing. So become consciously biased. No, we have to. We are in a place of consciousness. We are. When I started this ideology and I started to do this presentation, I just I didn't realize what realm I'm going into. But God is opening my eyes because I've struggled with this for quite a long time. This ideology and this concept of conscious bias is just something that has always resonated with me for quite a long time. But I suddenly realized that I'm aligning myself to what is actually happening in my environment because our consciousness, we are becoming conscious of what is happening around us. Our consciousness is becoming awakened. Our consciousness is drastically becoming awakened. And because it's drastically becoming awakened, I believe people is going to tune in into this. And there will be great understanding of this conversation that we are having. So start with me today. Be open minded to this conversation. There's so many things that will be coming up from this. And it's going to, you know, open our consciousness. Totally open our consciousness. And I want everyone to come along with me on this journey. Just join me. Don't join me on this journey and let us explore this whole process together. Let's just explore this whole process together as we go along. So today we've spoken about the key concept of conscious bias, and we have three areas in which we are focusing on, starting from gender, race, and religion. So today Before today, I'm going to really focus on religion as a key aspect of our conscious bias. So, religion is one of the most powerful cultural forces sh- shaping identity, values, and social interaction. So, in my framework, religion is not treated as divisive maker, but as a conscious tool for building bridges. So I'm treating it as a conscious tool for building bridges. We're going to have a short interlude. I'm going to play some music. I just needed a bit of, I needed you guys to just excuse me for a moment. So while we play some music. So, as we welcome back, everyone, and for those of you that might just be joining us at this moment, this is Susuana Olatunji-Komolafe, your host on Susuana on the Move, and to continue our conversation on conscious bias. The ideology and the concept is a new concept in which I'm trying to create more awareness globally, and is a concept I'm trying to create more awareness around and pioneering these whole ideology around conscious bias to raise up consciousness and tuning into the consciousness awakening that is happening in our world today. And I want every one of us to join me and tune in, because We are in this dispensation whereby the people's consciousness is being awoken, and in order for us to be tuning into this realm, we are having this conversation on conscious bias, and today we are digging into religion as a key aspect, as one of the key aspects of conscious bias. So I said religion is one of the most powerful cultural forces shaping identity, values, and social interaction. This is my framework that religion is not a threat as the divisive maker, but as a conscious tool for building bridges. So remember the word itself, it's not treated in this content as a divisive maker, but as a conscious tool for building bridges. So the whole concept of this conscious bias, there's some key words and there's some key principles which we are developing as we go along this process of bringing this ideology and concept into life. One, we talk about awareness, we talk about accountability, and we talk about actionable change. So what that means is that first become aware of your biases and prejudice that you have in all these key aspect area, which one is gender, race, and religion. Take accountability of that and make an actionable change. So, one, awareness. Religion often influences our moral code and community belongings. By acknowledging our faiths, traditions, shapes perceptions of us and them. Individuals can consciously examine where biases arises. For example, let's say Christian, Muslim, and African traditions. And I'm picking this tree basically because I'm a Nigerian, as an I'm from the Yoruba origin, which is part of the nation called Nigeria, and which belongs to the continent that has been named as Africa, known as the Alekubele land, which is the origin name of Africa before it was named as Africa. And I'm a Christian, but I come predominantly from a nation that celebrates three different types of religion. Christian, although I don't see Christians as a religion. I see it more of a way of life. But when we categorize it, it's on the as it's become a religion. Muslims and African traditions. So faith may carry implicity hierarchy, and that's the reason why those three things comes out. So faith may carry implicity hierarchy in the diaspora communities. Conscious biases, conscious bias asks us to name these influences openly. So what I'm saying is that be open about it, become aware, and speak openly about it. And you speaking openly about it is that you're taking ownership of your thought and of your cultural foundational prejudice or biases that you have. Engage conversation, know it, but act, you know, become accountability for those thoughts, find solution, have conversation, get clarity, and take actionable changes. So religious teaching emphasize responsibility. Most of the religious teaching emphasize responsibility, whether through Christians' notions of state worship, Islamic principles of justice, or action African spiritual traditions of communal harmony. So my model is leveraging. So what I'm doing in this framework that I'm creating and the model in which I'm using when we're talking about those great principles, which three has come up already, and I'm talking about the accountability aspect of it, is that my model leverage these values to hold individuals and institutions accountable for how bias manifest in policies, how these biases, which we have, how it manifests itself within our policies, workplace, and communities. We have to hold our institutions accountable. We have to hold our leaders accountable. We have to hold our institution accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable, you know, for how biases manifest in policies, workplace, and community. So, actionable changes. So, what are the actionable changes we're taking? Religion provides visuals, narratives, and practice that can be reoriented, towards inclusivity. And whenever I mention the word inclusivity, it is important for me to point out that being inclusive, when I'm talking about inclusivity, does not mean that you dim the light on other people. I don't want you to dim my light because I want to be inclusive. And I don't want you to isolate me within that space of inclusivity. So, being inclusive is you recognizing that I'm there and me also welcoming you within that space. And that we both welcome each other, acknowledge one another, accept one another, recognize the differences, celebrate the differences, promote each differences, don't dim my lights, and don't isolate me. That is my own inclusivity, which I'm talking about within this content of concept and ideology that I'm preaching. That is what I mean by inclusivity. That is my own definition of inclusivity. I don't want an inclusivity that isolates or dim other people's light or silence others over one. Because to me, that's what I'm observing. Own definition of inclusivity equally shine. So, what are the evidence based content when we talk about this? Now, in Ireland, African diasporas include diverse religion affiliation, according to the Central Statistic Office. Christianity remains the largest faith among African nations in Ireland, but Islam and Pentecostal movements are also significant. This diversity means that religion is both a potential source of division and a powerful platform for unity. So it can be used in different ways. And that is what the statistic is saying. And that is the way I'm reading the statistic. So that really that it can be used in different ways. It can be used as a source of division. It can also be used as a source of unity. Be aware of that, and that is what the idea of my conscious bias is talking about. Don't ignore that. Be aware of both. That it can be used as a division, and it can be used as a unit to unite us together. So when I say conscious bias in this context, and with the ideology in which I'm preaching, this is what I'm saying. Be aware, take accountability, and make an actionable change. So by blending religion into conscious bias, I'm ensuring, this is what I'm ensuring, that the diaspora community do not ignore faith as the driver of identity. It cannot be ignored, but instead use it as a conscious, constructive force. Because if you look at our society today, and which I'm not going deep into it because I'm focusing on building this, and I think this will reshape what we are seeing in our community today. The trend at which religions is changing the diversity, inclusiveness, and equity within our community is drastic. And it's because we're still embracing unconscious bias rather than it is time to move beyond that. This is a time consciousness is arising. Our consciousness is arising, and things has to change. Our consciousness is arising, and things needs to change. Things needs to change. So direction of awareness, accountability, and action. Action it will change. So just to point out some um, of my models, how it translates religion into practical steps, and I'm just going to point those out. So when I talk about awareness, I'm recognizing how faith shapes identity and biases. And examples as interfaith workshop, naming stereotype. Interfaith workshop is been naming as stereotyping it. Accountability, using religious values to hold community responsible, using those values which is between those religions which I've mentioned, in terms of harmony, in terms of communal harmony, in terms of justice, in terms of accountability, respect, faith based, using those values which each religion hold to make for the community to become responsible, you know, to hold community responsible. Actionable, transform visuals and teaching into inclusive practice. Transform it. All those visuals that, by different religion, transform it. It's because it is not transforming our community. So we should start using it to transform our community. So I'll give a very practical example when I say it, actionable actions and to transform it, the visuals and the teaching into inclusive practice. So for example, when we say people should, let's talk about the commandments. So what one commandment? Thou shalt not kill. So use that teaching to make it into an inclusive practice. So when we are talking, so you say thou shalt not kill, and when you're talking about the inclusiveness, become actionable. Let it become not just saying it, become actionable. Those practices become actionable, and if everybody understands that, there will be no war because we will rather engage in conversation resolving conflicts in so many ways than to kill, than to go for war. And this is what we're saying that the change should be. Share cultural, religious festival across community. But when you are sharing it, like I said, be actionable. So those words that we say that we're already aware of and we are becoming accountable for, taking responsibility for it as leaders within the community, putting it into practice. Putting it into practice. So let's imagine a young African Muslim in Dublin. So let's start with that. Who feels excluded in civic spaces. Or let's just put, for example, a young African Christian. So it could be Muslim, it could be a young African Christian, it could be a young African spirituality in Dublin who feels excluded. Either way, true conscious bias, true their conscious bias. They already feel that they've been excluded. This is the thinking. So it doesn't matter which religion you are, whether you're Christian, we feel exclusive, you feel consciously feel that you have been excluded, if you're Muslim or an African spirituality. So religious identity is not erased, but affirmed as part of island multicultural fabrics. Similarly, a Pentecostal church in Cavan can consciously partner with Catholic parish to host an African History Month event or model inclusivity, hold an event together, coming together, because that is faith with community, Can you see that in that way? Faith with community. This lived example shows how religion, when consciously engaged, becomes a vehicle for belonging rather than exclusion. It becomes that's what it becomes, a vehicle for belonging rather than exclusion. So what I'm saying in summary, and in this concept, what I'm saying in summary is that religion is not a peripheral issue in my conscious bias. It is a core drive of awareness, accountability, and actionable change by consciously engaging faiths, traditions, communities, and this can transform biases into generative force for inclusion, justice, and national cohesion. These are critical concepts that we need to embrace. These are critical concepts we need to embrace. This is a change that I'm looking for. This is a change that I hope we can preach as leaders in our community, in our workplaces, in our churches, in our homes, because everything starts from development, starts from home. Like the word say, charity begins at home. It's about development begins at home. So that's so it's let's start from our homes, let's start from our community, our churches, our workplaces, where we gather. Let's start from there. So let's start from these places. Let's make these, let's shout about this. Let's talk about this. So don't let us be ignorant of the importance of this. Don't be ignorant of it. So don't let us be ignorant of this. And I hope we can understand what I'm saying in regards to this, how important this is for every one of us. Um, how important this is. So, just driving us down, we you guys with me? Okay. So we've talked about conscious bias, and we have talked about the tricky aspects of our conscious bias. We just touch a little, just giving a foundational conversation around this tricky concept. Like the whole, as we go ahead and have this conversation around this key ideology, which I'm talking about, as we go about it, we're going to always come back to this tricky concept, which we're using as the foundational conversation. And remember that we said culture is the background, but it's not just the background, it's the foundation in which all these three aspects lies in. So, which is the gender, race, and religion. So, I briefly introduce us. So, what I've done is to introduce us to each of these key aspects: gender, race, and religion. So, I've introduced us to this. So, talked about the foundation, the aspects of this ideology concept, this key concept of ideology, unconscious bias, and the role that culture plays as the foundation of where all these key concepts taught comes from. So I hoping that I'm going to sip a bit of water. Oh, just give me a moment there, guys. I'm having a dry mouth. Yeah, so let's continue our dialogues. Let's continue our conversation. And here is that I want to see how we respond to this three key concept that I've introduced to us, and the best way you can make this possible for myself is that you engage me in conversation through the chat box. is by you guys engaging me in the chat box. That is really, to make it interactive, and make it interactive in the chat box. Through the chat box, so that every one of us is, in one form, shape, or the other, is we are all contributing in one form. That we are all giving our own contribution, and we're all giving our own contribution towards this. And that we all agree together, that we all agree together, in this, what will I say, this line of thought, that we all agree together in this line of thought, that we're all agreeing together. So I'm hoping that we're all agreeing together on this. That's, our thoughts are aligned together as we dive into this conversation, and that our thoughts are being aligned together. So that we are all aligned together, in this thought of line, yeah, that our thoughts and is aligned together, and that we're not just, here, we're not just, it's that our conversations are evidence based, that our conversation is evidence based, and that we align with the thoughts of what, we align in with his thoughts, as we continue to engage in this conversation together. So sorry there, guys. You know, so yeah, that we can we can become, um, we can become really, really honing our own narratives when it comes to this conversation. That we can hone our own narratives. We can become responsible in the actions that we take to foster these kind of conscious bias, to foster it in our homes, in our community, and to foster it in a way that it could manifest a change. Because there's just no need us talking about all these things if it doesn't manifest change. So, conscious, whereas according to the framework in which I'm creating, and what I'm hoping and what I'm expecting, is that it fosters a change that is being manifested, that we can all see, become aware of it, be accountable, and be actionable in our actions, in our communities, in our homes, in our, as leaders, as leaders in the community, within the policies that we create, that those policies are reflecting, that the policies are reflecting our narratives, our conversations, and our actions matches those narratives that we're talking about, those change we want to see. We become those change in our community. We foster those changes in our community, that we foster those changes within our community, and we make it relevant within our community. So, yeah, you all have the opportunity to contribute to this conversation. You have the opportunity to foster the change along with me as I continue to engage us in this critical conversation, open up this conversation to every one of us, and then allowing ourselves to be, you know, immersed with it. So I'm going to say a big thank you to all of you that have joined me in this conversation. And for those of you that will be joining us later on, seeing this and just coming on board with this conversation, and as you send us your contributions and comments, I just want to say a big thank you for everyone. Again, it's your host, Susuana Olatunji-Komolafe, on Susuana on the Move. Go onto our YouTube channel. It's essential that you subscribe to us, and when you subscribe, anytime I come live, you have the opportunity to be notified and to be able to join. Also, go on the LinkedIn, which is a professional platform, and these are for professionals that could also see it and see how this can be applicable with their working place. And you can just send me questions with regard to the framework. If you like to be part of these, or you want me to come into your work environment to deliver this framework within your working environment, in your schools, in your communities, in your institutions, and you want to invite me for conversations around this, I'll be happy to oblige. Thank you, and I'll leave you with some nice, just background music there, for, with some background music.